The retired trade union leader Bill Morris examines how the world of work has changed in his lifetime and asks whether we have to endure a culture of overwork, job insecurity and work-life imbalance. And he starts with a blue sky thinker, the historian Theodore Zeldin.
I would like work to be abolished. Work is pain. In French, work is travail. Work is a burden. It's something you do at the moment for money. I would like it to be an activity in which you feel you're contributing to society, you're making the world better, you're improving yourself, and therefore you should not be working. The difference between work and play would vanish.
Who wouldn't go along with Theodore Zeldin's dream of a workless future? But for most of us, it's not the reality of the workaday world. Over the coming 4 weeks, I'll be exploring work from many angles. We'll hear people talking about their experiences at work, and we'll also hear from experts who have spent most of their lives studying work. And today, I will focus on how the workplace, the workforce, and our attitude to work have changed in my lifetime. But let's start by returning to Theodore Zeldin on why he wants to abolish work.
First of all, we are organized into a model of business which was invented several hundred years ago and perfected about 100 years ago in the form of the corporation, which is directed at enriching shareholders. Now, this is a legal obligation of a corporation. So there is need, I think now, of thinking about how corporations can be of use not just to their shareholders but to the society in general in a much more positive way, and social responsibility needs to grow. So we probably need new kinds of institutions. Secondly, from the point of view of the individual, it used to be absolutely wonderful for an individual, a woman, to come and work in a factory because it gave her a bit of security and a salary, and to work in an office, and that was wonderful for a time. But then it has been realized that it is in fact restricting people and using people almost as machinery, instead of saying the purpose of work is to enable you to flower, to become a better person, to widen your horizons. And I feel that now that we've educated people, they are much more curious and much more demanding, and they're not the same kind of people who came out of the fields as peasants and just needed something to survive. And so we need to rethink the way we work, to say one of the main objectives of work is not only to survive, but also to satisfy all our spiritual and intellectual needs and moral needs. Thirdly, the way that we have developed in, I suppose one could say, the last few decades, we've developed mechanisms of management science which focused on efficiency by reducing the number of people who work and getting them to work more intensely. And the result is that the pressure on work has increased so much that it reminds me of the French Revolution, the period before the French Revolution, where the people were increasing taxes, and the peasants just could not pay taxes anymore. There was just nothing left. And likewise, here at the moment, there is a limit to the pressure you can exert. When, if we have no time to stand and stare, well, what is life about? And so fourthly, I think every profession is now in crisis. To be a member of a profession used to be a wonderful thing. You joined a new family of people devoted to public service. You were respected. And now, of course, the professions are either demoralized, as say in the teaching profession, where they're not receiving the respect they used to do, or they've lost their credibility, as in the accounting profession, or they are not able to control what they do, as in the engineering profession and the medical profession, where you can only spend 8 minutes with a patient. You cannot do your job as you want to do it. And the great satisfaction of work is being able to master a task and acquire an expertise which helps you to do things that others can't do. And nothing is more frustrating than not being allowed to do it properly.
Theodore Zeldin's concerns can be reduced to a simple question asked through the ages. Do we live to work, or do we work to live? 400 years ago, John Locke, another Oxford thinker, wrote that labor for labor's sake is against nature. Well, however we feel about it, work is central to our lives. It defines us. And whether it's the impact of IT, the way companies have been restructured, extending working hours, one thing is certain: work is no longer what it used to be. Here are two men of roughly my age: Jeff Sullivan, a retired tin miner from Cornwall, and Charles Handy, who's written extensively about work.
When I left university many years ago now, I looked for an organization to work in. It never occurred to me to do anything else unless I was going to be a teacher or a priest, which is what my parents wanted me to do. I didn't want either of those options.
I left school at 15 with a very limited education. I used to go every day. I never used to sneak off school. My dad would have pulled my head off if I did that, but I didn't learn anything.
So I was very lucky. I got offered a job by Shell International, the oil company, and I remember being so thrilled that as soon as I got their letter, I cabled my parents, life is solved.
So when I left school, I think, well, I can't use my brain. That's out of the question, so I'm going to have to use my brawn somewhere. So I went into the mine to work, and I found it smashing.
Shell, the first thing they gave me was my pension book. And they told me that they would look after me, provided I kept to the rules of the organization and did well for the rest of my life. So indeed, life was Shell.
Most people wouldn't work no more than, say, 6 months. It'd be unusual to get somebody that would stay 12 months. I stayed 32 years.
You were graded in Shell on about 10 different things for your appraisal scheme. But top of the list, I remember, was loyalty, because they really expected you to be totally committed to them. And in return, of course, they were guaranteeing you security, self-development, or Shell development, perhaps I should say. And it was a comfortable life. They were very good.
So it was quite a big mine for Cornish standards at the time, our mine. I mean, we had 600 men underground, which was fairly big. They actually took these youngsters like myself on at 18, and in 20 years' time, the same management was there, and they grew up with the staff.
The chap who recruited me, and with whom I sort of spent the first day, told me the sort of jobs I could expect to have. And I remember he said, you will, for instance, be the general manager of a country and the Shell company in that country. Well, I have to tell you that 25 years later, that company did not exist, that job did not exist, but that country did not exist.
The top manager insisted on being called Mr. Pengelly, but he deserved the Mr. Mr. Pengelly came underground, and if he said something was going to happen, it happened. And do you see people shift? Do you see things get tidied up? There was one manager after that, was called Mr. And after that, they were John, George and Jim, and none of them ever had the same respect from the men.
There was a problem. I got married after about 6 years in Shell, and indeed in those days you had to tell Shell who you were marrying, and if they had any worries they insisted on interviewing her. You had to get their permission. I married this young woman who's an army daughter from the British Army, and I thought she'd make an admirable Shell wife. But after we'd been married about a year, she said, "Do you know what you've done?" She said, "Well, you've signed away your life."